Okay, now when you're working with formulas, this will be kind of like the last thing we talk about for this course. When you're working with formulas, it's pretty simple. You have to get used to some new verbiage here. I got written up here. So first and foremost, we have letters that represent unknown amounts in equations or formulas that are called variables. The reason they're called variables is their amount changes constantly. Now, right here, I have the traditional way you write multiplication. Multiplication was just with the x. But when you look at this stuff, the most commonly used variable is x, so we can't have x for times and for an unknown amount. So we write new forms of this. So if you look at this, all three of these are equivalent forms of this. Okay? The most classic way you'll see it is you'll see AB. That means A times B. The other way, you'll see parentheses, A parentheses B, or parentheses A parentheses B. These all mean A times B. Okay? So the main way they'll signify multiplication is not write multiplication at all. They'll just say, okay, you see two things together, you got to remember it's times. Like if I had A, B, C right next to each other, I know this means A times B times C. Okay, and it doesn't matter how long the terms are. It could be as long as your arm, or all letters of the alphabet right next to each other. As long as they're right next to each other, it means multiply. The other one we should be familiar with is division. Okay, now with division, if you have the traditional way you've probably seen division is A divided by B. With the old school division sign. So when you get into formulas and stuff, this is almost exclusively, it's dead. No one uses this symbol. So we should know this already, but just in case you forgot, we'd represent this as A over B. Okay? Now, I mean, it's not the most difficult thing in the world. Some people forget that the fraction bar means division as well. They're like, well, how could it be a fraction and division? Well, just like we talked about earlier, that's why all decimals are fractions and all fractions are decimals. When you take this quantity divided by the bottom quantity, you get a decimal if it's a fraction. But I mean, those are two equivalent forms of stuff we've done so far. It's just now we're kind of in more the algebra mode, so that's why they're being written differently. Okay, so let's get into more of the nuts and bolts of what you'll be doing. So if you look right here, I got a formula. Move that up a little bit. We got a formula here. They said, I'm sorry, this should say evaluate. Okay, so now evaluate means get a number value. I mean, it means solve in a roundabout way. If you really want to split mathematical hairs here, solving really involves finding an unknown amount and using algebra to do it, but evaluate is just basically plug and chug. So here we have a formula, D equals RT. Now I know with this one, everyone probably knows what that is. Distance equals rate times time. But what I want you to think about with these ones is take it from a more purely math perspective. When you look at this, D equals RT, when I look at this, I just see D equals whatever R is times T. And what they'll do is they'll give you a formula, and they'll tell you what to plug in. And then it's your job to substitute these values in and do the math and figure it out. So basically with these ones, all these problems are order of operations problems that haven't been pre-set up for you. So all we have to do is we take the 65, that'll take the place of R, and then the 3 will take the place of the T, and then we do the math to break it down. So we have D equals, now when I plug something in, I put in parentheses. That's just my, I don't know, nervous tick or, pet peeve or just the way I do it. I don't know why I can't break the habit. So I plug in 65, and I put the other one in parentheses, parentheses 3, and we just do the math. 65 times 3, so that means D will equal, what's that, 195? Okay, so and in case you're curious, it's 195 miles. I didn't put any of the units with these numbers here because I'm more concerned that you plug things in correctly and then break the math down correctly. That's really all I'm going for with these ones. If you know what the units are, you can put the units in, but I'm not going to dock points for that. So let's go to a couple more examples here. I mean, this really isn't too bad. most people say, well, Mr. Michaels, this stuff's a lot easier than the stuff we were doing at the beginning of the quarter. It's like, and the reason is, yeah, it is easier because you have a blueprint of the math you need to do right in front of you. There's no guesswork where it's like, do I multiply here? Do I divide? Do I use a square root? No, it's all done for you. Here's the math. So look at this one. You might recognize this formula too. We have V equals LWH. So right here, I encourage you to pause the video and think, or say that formula out loud to yourself what LWH means. In this case, it'd be V equals L times W times H. Or if you want the real formal thing, volume equals length times width times height. But we're just looking at these purely as mathematical formulas. If the contextualization for formulas can come later. So when I look at this one, they gave me the values. We have L, W, and H. So all we do is just plug and chug. You have V equals 16.25 times 3.1 times 2.4. So let's go ahead and multiply all three of those together. And then we'll get our answer. So do 16.25 times, what is it? 3.1 times 2.4. So we get our answer of V equals 120.9. So they're not really difficult problems. It's just, can you plug things in correctly? Can you break it down correctly? Okay, now I got this one. Here's a little bit more intricate formula here. This is volume of a sphere when you have using the diameter. So if we look at this one, again, pause and kind of say what you need to do out loud to yourself. So I'd say this is pi times d squared times h divided by 4. So again, we just plug and chug. You have volume equals, substitute 3.14 for pi, so 3.14 times d squared, so that's 6.25 squared, times 7.2, and this is all over 4. Okay, so now what you do 6.25 squared, or now we look at this. Sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself there. So now basically all this is order operation problem. You can kind of ignore the V. You just break it down in the correct order. So with this one, we have all this stuff on top. So you got to break all this stuff down on top first before you can divide by 4 at the end. So we do the 6.25 squared first. I'm blanking off the top of my head. 6.25, let's square that. 39.0625 sounds right. Let's do 39.0625, and then we have 3.14, the 7.2. And notice when I'm writing this one down, I mean, with anything, I always kind of go debate students with this again and again and again. Anything you don't use, if you're doing these on paper, anything you don't use, just bring it down, okay? Because if you're like me, I go way too fast and I mess things up and I forget things. But, like this one, all I did was square the 6.25, so I can see, okay, what did I do to get down to here? Well, this and this are different, so I must have squared this number to get down to here. And I didn't use this or this, so I just brought them down. Okay, so let's multiply. I'm going to multiply all three of those at once. Move this over here. So we do times 3.14 times 7.2. So we get 883.125. Let's see, 883.125. Didn't do the divided by 4, so that still comes down. And that still equals V. Okay, I always say the more you can write down, the better off you are. Especially if you want this stuff to stick. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I can just plug in calculator and get the answer. It's like, well, yeah, that's true, but if you know how to break it down and you know how to break the math down yourself, then that's what takes you from just plugging things into the calculator to, okay, I can troubleshoot things. So now we divide by 4. So we get 220 So we get V equals 220 point, forgot what the rest was, 220.78125, 0.78125. Okay, so this one, I think when I have you do these problems, I'm going to have you round to the nearest whole number. So let's just go ahead and round that up to 221. Okay, so when you're working with formulas, it's not the hardest thing in the world. You just got to break things down correctly. You know, just make sure you follow the blueprint here, write everything down correctly. But other than that, I mean, there's your blueprint right there, what to do. So, I mean, it's just, if you really want to get good at this stuff, I'd say challenge yourself to write it down on paper, work it out, and do it step by step, because that's what will really help you out with this stuff.